Today we're going to go ahead and get started, and the mayor will be joining us soon. Before we get started, I just wanted to take a quick minute to acknowledge that Councilmember Lurick has an upcoming birthday, so happy birthday, Linda.
And I was at Councilwoman Adamson had a birthday this past week.
I did, but that's okay. We're not talking about it.
Just don't deal with the past.
Yeah, we're not going to deal with the past, that's right. Okay, so the first item on our, I guess we need to go ahead and have a roll call before we jump into our agenda items. So, Connie, will you go ahead and call that roll?
Adamson.
Here.
Bray.
Here.
Cheatham.
Here.
Lurick. Here. Ortega.
Here.
Stevens.
Here.
Glad.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 2 is our library board update. We will have representatives from the library board that will discuss their goals and projects as well as the council's policies and expectations.
Good morning, council members. I'm Sandra Shropshire, I'm the chair of the Library Advisory Board. And I'm glad to be here this morning. Am I speaking loudly enough?
No.
The library, like all city departments, has had a very interesting year. But I've grown accustomed to coming to this body and giving positive reports about the library, and that's what I intend to do again today. The library is stewarding the resources that you provide, and as you know, this past year, the brick exterior has been redone. It was completed and it was successful, and the new furnace is in place and functioning. Eric?
Functioning beautifully, keeping us warm.
And as evidence of the fact that this library is very active in the community, I'm giving you a rundown of a chronology of the past year. This partnership with the Civic Symphony has gone well. All 6 pairs of tickets were booked for all 4 concerts for the ISU Civic Symphony. And that's just been renewed for this current year. Eric tells me just this morning that also the Shoshone Museum tickets, a similar program to the Shoshone Museum, has been approved, and the tickets have gone out already. The book sale went as usual. It's usually about 5,000 proceeds. The food for fines was affected this year because most likely the elimination of overdue fines for minors. But that's what was expected and not considered to be a problem. Drop down to the spring when the library closed. And during the month of May, while the building was closed, staff were in the building, preparing the building for safe occupation by themselves as well as by patrons. And opened back up in 1st of June with curbside pickup, limited front porch delivery, meaning to very few patrons who were unable to leave their homes. And summer reading went online. A few statistics about the library itself. Marshall is the 8th largest in Idaho in terms of population served, and that has dropped from the previous year. Last year when I was here, it was 5th in terms of population served, and we're seeing the growth in the Treasure Valley affect Marshall's ranking. But it is a high impact organization with 89% of its population as a registered user within the base, and that's remarkable. I list for you the 2019 statistics. don't reflect the activities I just went over with you for 2020. All numbers are about the same as where they've been, except for the wireless network user count has gone up exponentially. It used to be a 5-figure amount, and now it's 6. So I think that speaks to the use that this community makes of the library. One way of speaking to it. Also is astounding to me is the number of library visits during calendar 2019. As you know, it's 6 times the population of Pocatello. That's quite a bit. Also, for the future, as you most likely are aware, the library will close on November 3rd for the election because it was determined that it could not safely hold the election in the building. So it will close. But otherwise, we'll continue with its plans to keep the staff and patrons safe while delivering library services. That concludes my report, and I'm happy to respond to any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Council. Do you have any questions for Ms. Ruffin? Yes.
Yeah. Do we know how many discrete users we have? I'm assuming that the use measurement is basically could be, you know, a smaller group of people with high usage people. Do we have any?
Sure. Eric Cease, Library Director. I don't know that we've pulled that number, although I'm sure that we probably could see how many active users we've got. It's still a really high percentage. We were fortunate to reach into a whole lot of the community, but I don't have that number right off the bat.
Sure.
So I'm sure that's something we could get a report on.
That would just be interesting to know for me. And then is the Civic Symphony partnership, is that the, because I know the Arts Council approved, is that, or do we have other donors to that program in addition?
It's we're trying to expand. We started with just the symphony itself, and we actually bought the tickets, but we got a buy one get one free from the symphony, so a deal from there, and they gave us that discount. We are working with the Arts Council. We're looking at things like theater tickets and various other things. But like the Shosho and Bannock Museum, I think, came through the Arts Council. Don't quote me on it, but I think that's how that occurred. And we're looking for other opportunities to become culturally involved.
And then the circulation per capita, visits per capita, I'm assuming that's just if whether somebody actually uses it or not. I mean, that's just a division.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And then have you firmed up your plans now that the next year's budget is known? Do you know how you're going to expend the fix-up funds and so forth?
We don't have that down, in stone at this point, but we generally know what we're trying to do, and it's along the lines of what we talked about during the budget.
So the restrooms and that's
right.
Sort of.
And there's always maintenance that you don't anticipate, and various other things that occur to us between now and throughout the year, that there might be things that we need to do. So it's not really in stone, but it's really very much along the lines of what we talked about.
Okay, great. And then final question, have you had any difficulties with people not wanting to wear masks and stuff, or have you been able to navigate that?
Only occasionally. We've really navigated it well. We get some that have indicated that they didn't want to, and we're pretty firm that they need to, especially folks that want to go upstairs, use the computers, use this and that without a mask, and we simply don't allow it. We have other options such as curbside, such as the quick bowls, the various other things. And so because there are reasonable alternatives, we can pretty comfortably be firm in our mask wearing mandate.
So staff hasn't been,
Oh, staff has had no issues at
Had
all.
to-
In fact, they're very, very interested in wearing masks, and it's interesting to see how dedicated they are also to thoroughly disinfecting surfaces and all
sure.
that on a regular schedule. They feel very comfortable because they're doing that.
right, and what I meant was that my question was really about, so staff hasn't been caught in the crosshairs.
No, they really haven't.
and they're-
It's been almost I'd say 95, 98% compliance in the very few cases where we have somebody that is non-compliant. It gets taken care of very easily.
Great, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, and we appreciate that the mayor has had the mandate for the city buildings, because that gives us backup. Say, well, you know, this isn't just us. This is the whole thing, and the mayor has indicated that masks need to be worn in public, in city buildings. That actually helps. And that gives us sort of the reasoning for being able to enforce what we wanted to do anyway.
Right, great. Thanks for everything you do. And
Thank
please
you.
thank your staff as well.
Got an amazing staff.
I think we have a question from Wendy.
I do a question and a comment. I also wanted to thank you for all the work that you've done, especially the extra work during these difficult times. I know the library has gone to great lengths to be safe, but I really applaud and admire your focus on not just being a library, but really being a community center and very service oriented. So I love that, and I think it's showing in the numbers how much we do serve the community. But Sandy, I did want to ask you, the book sale that just took place, you said that it was about the same as usual, so
I'm sorry, this book sale, I note on this report, was in 19.
oh, okay. So that was kind of where I was going with this.
I don't
This
yet
is
have the figures.
last year's. Okay.
Yeah, the outdoor book sale that we just had this
Correct.
weekend
Do we
made
know?
about $4,000, which is really great. And it was done outdoors for extra
Yeah.
safety, and still required masks and distancing and all that. And sometimes it's hard to distance when you've got a bunch of people gathered around, piles of books. But they did really, really well.
And so the sales were not negatively affected?
Not really, no.
Okay.
And we've had really consistent sales for their permanent counter sales across from their circulation desk. Those continue to sell really, really well. So we've been very fortunate. And the Friends have been great in supporting us for a variety of different projects and purchases, and we appreciate them very much.
Great. Thank you.
So Eric, do you have that money earmarked for a specific purpose? I mean, are you going to reinvest that in materials, or are you going to?
For the Friends?
The book sale money?
Yeah, that's, the Friends of the Library is separate from the library itself.
Okay.
It's its own organization, and we really can't touch each other.
Okay.
And so when we have things that come up that we would like support for, we ask the Friends, and they can choose to support or not support whatever it is that we've asked.
Okay.
So there really isn't, it's not like a budgeted item where we've got it marked for things. As the year comes by, we have an opportunity to ask them to support us in various ways, and it's their choice as to whether they wish to do that or not.
Got it. Thank you.
And are they part of the financial support for, or is it in the plan in terms of the ticket?
They're not part of that at the moment. I don't know that they will be necessarily. This works pretty well with that. So. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your support. I
Eric,
appreciate
thank you. I apologize. I was a little bit late getting in here. We had an emergency back there to take care of. But that being said, make sure your staff knows how much we appreciate them, and the library board as well. Thank you so much for all that you do and the work. We've got a great asset there. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 3 is Housing and Alliance and Community Partners update. Representatives from Housing and Alliance and Community Partners will discuss their goals and projects as well as council's policies and expectations. Sunny, how are you?
Wonderful. Good morning, Council. It's very nice to be in front of you today. I hope that you can hear me. Masks tend to muffle us all just a little bit. See if we can get my PowerPoint up and going. As I'm sitting here, I thought, one of my numbers I might not have filled in this morning. It got to be a little bit hectic over at the office, but we'll go with it and we'll see. So I'm glad to be in front of you today. My name is Sunny Shah, and I am the Executive Director at Housing Alliance and Community Partnerships. And I think that this marks my 10th year of coming and speaking to City Council. So it's crazy how time flies when you're having fun. So I know that we have some new members, and so I thought I would give you a little bit of history of housing authorities, so that way, perhaps if you have questions for me, we can base it on history going forward. So housing authorities were part of FDR's New Deal, and they actually created the Housing Act of 1937. When that was created, it gave states the opportunity to write into their statutes the opportunity to be able to create housing authorities within their communities. Immediately, there were 4 that were created, and then after that, many others rolled out. Idaho did not actually join that march until about the early 50s. Idaho is always a state that prides itself on that we took ourselves up by the bootstraps, and my argument to that is always it was much easier if you had boots to start with. But we're really grateful that in Idaho Statute 50-1905 is where housing authorities for our state are actually created. And so that talks about our governing body, how my governing body is appointed, and the work that we do. There's some really interesting things in that statute that state what housing authorities can do that, we don't, but it's certainly something that down the road we can, and we will talk about that a little bit more. We should be very, very proud of the city of Pocatello. Very proud. We are one of 9 housing authorities in the entire state. Pocatello back in 1968 had some really great foresight in saying we should take advantage of this in order to create affordable housing for our most vulnerable residents. Being only 9, that may sound like a lot. If you go somewhere in the south, it's not uncommon to have 140 housing authorities in the state. Not uncommon at all. So our closest neighboring housing authority, there's a small one in American Falls, and then Twin Falls, Jerome, Buell. There's a cooperative between counties that goes up into the central part of Idaho. There's Boise City, Ada County Housing, Nampa Housing Authority, and then when the other cities and counties decided not to create a housing authority, the state legislature stepped in again and said, well, for the bulk of the state, Idaho Housing and Finance will be the housing authority for the bulk of the state. And they don't have public housing, they only have vouchers, which we'll talk about in just a minute. So we were created in 1968. We just celebrated our 50th birthday. And I think, now we're at 52, I think we look pretty darn good. We were initially created with 72 units of public housing. And that is when you go out the back door and you see this red brick kind of square that's just directly across the street. That's public housing. That building began being occupied in 1971. That's how long it's been there. There are 72 units there, and it's all elderly and disabled. From there, we went on to get a voucher program, where we assist, we currently have 566 households that are being served, but we have capacity up to 700. Now, that's an interesting thing when the government says you can assist 700, but they don't give you the money for that, as we understand. So we have a contract that says, yeah, you can assist 719 households, but right now we've got about enough money to probably assist about 640, and we're working to get up to that number. We're working very diligently. But we are more than just sticks and bricks. We'll talk more about that. When I first got here, and this is the view of 10 years ago, we were at 566, today we're at 585. We had 266 units, and we really were at that time just focused on our role in providing housing. We're going to talk about how that vision has expanded in a moment. But I wanted to share with you who my current Board of Commissioners are. I believe that we really have a cream of the crop of Board of Commissioners. They all bring a separate set of skills to the table. We have Karina Juarez, who is the Director of Disability Services at Idaho State. She's my board chair. Charlene Reddish is a resident commissioner. We are required by statute and by HUD regulation to have one resident member on our board. So that's a family that is served by one of our programs. Lori Craney from the school district, Amy Rhodes from Citizens Community Bank, and Kevin Bailey from United Way. That's what makes up my Board of Commissioners, and I think that you would agree that that's quite the powerhouse right there. They are dynamic and they are visionary, which is what we need. Our mission is that we cultivate affordable housing communities and partnerships that inspire self-reliance, growth, and optimism. So let me tell you about our properties. We have Christensen Courts, like I talked about. Many of you, when you drive by it, you don't realize how pretty it is in the courtyard. That view on the left is in the courtyard. There are 72 units there. It's public housing. That means that households pay a percentage of their income towards their rent and utilities. At Christensen Courts, and Michelle, who is here with me, is the property manager and does many other properties and is my right hand. They pay 30%, and this property is elderly disabled individuals. So most of the people who live here have Social Security and are living on about $770 a month. So they pay 30% of their income towards the rent and utilities. On the right, you see Portneuf Towers. It was built on the heels of Christensen Courts, and it's what's called Section 8 new construction. The government no longer is no longer building public housing and is no longer building Section 8 new construction properties. Portneuf Towers was built in 1972. It has 72 units, again, elderly disabled. Although it's a different program type and a completely different department of HUD, it's like the right hand and left hand, quite frankly, but the residents here also pay 30% of their income towards rent and utilities. We have McKinley Manor and Maple West. These properties are what's called multifamily Section 236. These households do not have a subsidy. So they pay the full rent amount, although utilities are included. What is the advantage of these properties is the fact that we are under contract with HUD to make sure that the rents are affordable. So if you're renting a one-bedroom at McKinley Manor, your rent is probably between $375 and $400 a month, and that includes utilities. A three-bedroom goes up to about $525 rent and utilities. So they're incredibly low cost because of that contract with HUD. The contract is for life of the property. So until they're demolished, if we were even to sell them, the contract stays with these properties. These properties were built, it was in the 70s that these properties were built. And they actually show it. I'm always trying to decide what to do with them because they're a split entry. And so to get to your apartment, you either have to go downstairs or you have to go upstairs. We see a lot of properties like that in Pocatello. It makes it so they are not ADA compliant. They are grandfathered in, but it is a challenge in our community. And it's something that I've been exploring. But do you tear them down? That's going to be a significant cost, although it would get you out of that contract. So I don't know, that's just something that we're thinking about and continually considering. We took on, it's been 5 years ago this month, we had been approached by HUD and Idaho Housing, who is a contract administrator for these properties, that we had an owner in the area that was getting into some trouble with some HUD-funded properties. And he was going to lose them unless we would manage them for him. So we agreed to be a management agent for him. These are income-based, so there's a significant amount of paperwork that goes with them. We finally believe after 5 years we're getting them up to a better standard, but there were so many items that had been deferred maintenance that they have been a real challenge. These units are 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, and there's a couple of 4-bedroom units. So they are families. They pay a percentage of their income. These are like Portneuf Towers, Section 8 new construction. And so they pay 30% of their income towards their rent and utilities. So obviously you have to be within a certain income threshold to live here. We purchased this property after I got here. This is part of my very visionary board's aggressive approach to how we should be managing our agency. Part of that philosophy is that we should become less dependent upon federal dollars. We really have felt the squeeze on that a couple of times when we went through sequestration back in 2010 and 11. We actually had to lay staff off and reduce services. And most recently, when we've seen government shutdowns, they have a huge impact on us. So we're looking to diversify our portfolio so that we can create in-house programs specifically targeting family self-sufficiency, so that we can ultimately have a goal to work with our families to move them into home ownership and employment. This fits into our goal nicely because we know that college can lead to self-sufficiency. So we have 69 beds of student housing at the ELMS. I will tell you, we were very concerned going into lease-up this year because of it being a college property. We really anticipated that there would be a real huge drop in lease-up. 69 beds, we have 6 vacancies. So I think that that's a real testament to what's happening up at ISU, that we're able to have students here in our community that are, investing in our community, spending their dollars here, going to school, getting their education, and living in properties like that. We have other open market properties. Pinewood, that you see there on the left, and Catsalamides on the far right, were built in the 80s, and so they were here when I came on board. They are, although open market, we work to ensure the fact that all of the properties that we own are below what is called the payment standard. HUD sets an amount that they say that people living on restricted incomes should be able to afford, and we don't go over that with our rent rates. So although they're open market, the rent rates are incredibly affordable. In the last couple of years, we've added to these 2 fourplexes on Jefferson. We just recently purchased the Rail Yard Apartments that are over on South 2nd. And we've purchased a house that's right here behind us also that we have. So those are some open market. So those are the sticks and bricks. But we also have people that are living out in the community, and this becomes a really vital program for our landlords in our community because of the revenue that is pumped in for those rental units. So we have actually 729 vouchers. We were at 578 last week when I prepared this, but we're at the 585 this morning. Tenants qualify for the program. It's based on income. We have to do a whole bunch of paperwork that includes verifying income, verifying child support, verifying health and welfare benefits, a lot of reporting to HUD, and then they get what we call a voucher, and they go and request from a landlord on the open market to rent one of their apartments or houses. When we've determined that it works for that household financially, because what one household can afford, another one may not be able to afford, so we determine that it will work for them financially, and then we go out and do an inspection to make sure that it meets really, really basic safe and sanitary measures. When it does that, then they're on the program, and we get money from HUD that we funnel directly to the landlord to pay the rent. We have about a 3 to 4 year wait list, but you can see there in bold that we actually infuse over $3 million a year into our economy through payments to landlords. And we're very appreciative of our landlords for working with our program. Obviously, without our landlords, we wouldn't be able to have a voucher program, and it's getting more and more difficult to get our families leased up. So we'll be talking a little bit later in the presentation about some really cool opportunities the agency has to be able to be a better partner with our landlords and help facilitate easier lease up for our residents. We do have availability to lease up on what's called a home ownership voucher program. So a household that has been in good standing on our program for at least a year, and by good standing I mean that they've been paying their rent like they're supposed to, they've not damaged their landlord's property, they can qualify for a home ownership voucher. We aren't a lending institution, so they have to be able to have credit good enough that they can get a home loan, But a lot of times we make that referral over to Neighbor Works. We partner really closely with them because they work with them on resolving any credit issues they may have. They get them through a first-time home ownership class, and then they sometimes have some sweat equity on some of their infill homes that they can allow them to get a real boost up on that down payment piece. Currently, we have 4 home ownership voucher holders. What we find with this program, if you're able-bodied, it can only last for 15 years. But we find that when we move folks into this home ownership program, it only takes about 5 or 6 years and they're completely off of our program because we know that home ownership is a boost to self-sufficiency and stability. And because of that stability, they've started earning enough income that they now pay their full payment on their own without any subsidy from us. We have 33 VASH vouchers that serve homeless veterans. Those are currently all issued and or leased. We have had VASH programs since Mayor, since you started your Mayor's Task Force Against Homeless Veterans. So we've had them, I think it's been 6 years?
I think so.
7 years maybe? And we've been getting them increased in increments, and this program is hugely successful. We're super proud of the fact that housing authorities across the country struggle with this program. And the reason why they struggle is because of the lack of communication between the VA and the housing authority. They're usually in different locations, and so the challenge is if you have a homeless veteran who's been suffering from trauma anyway, and you meet with the VA and get qualified, and then you make an appointment for them next week at the housing authority, somewhere along the line they get lost in that system. We feel like why it's so successful here is because our VA caseworker, Cy Williams, is amazing, and we have also offered him office space in our building. So he qualifies a veteran, he walks them across the hall to the caseworker who issues their voucher, and they go out that day looking for a unit. We feel like that's a huge success for this program, and we've actually had some other housing authorities in the country that have started modeling that. Good news and looking ahead, we also have 7 additional mainstream vouchers. Prior to before the CARES Act, we had 22, so now we have 29. So what is mainstream? Mainstream vouchers are for individuals experiencing homelessness with mental disability. And so we work really closely with some of our homeless providers in the community so that we can get those referrals. And so we are currently with those, we just got 7 more in August, so at 29, and we have 20 of them leased. And we've got referrals for all of them. So I think that those will be leased really quickly. That's exciting to be able to bring that opportunity into Pocatello, specifically targeting that audience. Now, if I were still in my old days and would wear a cheerleading uniform, I would have worn it today about this next one, and it's the moving to work opportunity. This is beyond huge, beyond huge. Moving to Work was created by Congressman HUD. It's called a demonstration program in 1992. So it's interesting that HUD has a demonstration program still from 92, and it's not just been like, hey, it's permanent, it works great. And in 1992, they approved 39 housing authorities to be moving to work agencies. 39 out of 3,300 housing authorities. Not very many. But in the meantime, those housing authorities have demonstrated that with some local control and local decision making on creating regulations, as well as funding flexibility, they've been able to do really amazing things. And some of those things have actually been incorporated nationally for all housing authorities. So what can you do with moving to work? You know, it's kind of in the name, but there's a lot of other things first. So what we get to do is take a look at the rules that were created in DC and say, you know, that really doesn't make a lot of sense here. It doesn't work for our program. Let's figure out what we can do to make our program work better. Part of that's removing barriers. Barriers that some of our households experience with our program. Our program is a pain. It is a pain. There's so much paperwork. And so we're going to take a look at how can we make it easier? How can we remove some of those barriers? How can we better partner with our landlords? You know, if we're wanting our families to be able to move into neighborhoods of opportunity, which we know studies show that children that grow up in neighborhoods of opportunity have more successful futures, then we could say, hey, Mr. and Ms. Landlord, if you've got these houses in this neighborhood, if you would be willing to lease them up to a voucher holder, we could give you an incentive for that, because suddenly we could use some of our other funds that previously were just in silos. We could use it to provide incentives for our landlords to work with families in neighborhoods of opportunity, which would be fabulous. The other thing that we can do that is a challenge for landlords is a landlord that decides to work with our program, there's a lot of paperwork at the start and it's time consuming. So a landlord may choose to not lease to a voucher person because they would say, you know, I've got somebody else who will take this unit today. And I know that for you guys to lease up this unit, it's going to take probably 10 days. We're going to lose 10 days of revenue. We might be able to say, we can pay you for those 10 days so that we can get you this person leased up. So we're really wanting to give our program participants that level playing field that renters on the open market might experience. We're going to do things that we can do some cost savings, remove some of the burdens for verifications. For example, we may have households that are elderly or disabled, and they have 8 or 9 different medical providers that we get verifications from. And if they don't send on the first request, then we have to do a second request, because we have to make sure that we've gotten, if they've identified 8 or 9, we have to have those identified in our file and verifications from them. And we may do all of that for them to get a $450 a year medical deduction. Well, instead of doing deductions itemized like that, we could say something like, you know what, we're going to eliminate all deductions and we're just going to give you, everybody that's elderly or disabled, a $2,000 deduction. Or instead of it being 30% of your income, if you're elderly or disabled, you're just going to pay 27% of your income. And that way we aren't going to go through the deduction piece. Because some of the folks who have prescriptions that are over, or medications that are over the counter, so they're saving their receipts for an entire year and bringing in their receipts. This way we could just say, you don't need to worry about that. You're already covered. So those are some things that we could do there. And then obviously the moving to work piece. We can do things to incentivize households to go move into the workforce. One of the things that I'm hearing and that we're putting in our final application is that in the next 10 years, we anticipate that the city of Pocatello is going to have a shortage of between 8,500 and 10,000 skilled workers. This is a way that we can help address that, is by working to move our households into the workforce. Now, that's not just saying you got to go to work or you're off my program, but we could utilize some of our funding to be able to create a navigator for them, or a family self-sufficiency specialist for them. And as we put together our working group, we're going to be addressing barriers that they may have. Transportation is a really big barrier. If somebody's doing shift work and they get off late at night, how are they going to get home if they don't have a vehicle? Childcare is another barrier. So these are all things that we need to be really thoughtful in addressing as we put together a move to work plan. And why do we get to put together a move to work plan? Well, I've been really blessed over the last 10 years to develop a really close working relationship with Senator Crapo. And meeting with him regularly and going up on the Hill, he is a huge fan of moving to work. He believes in local control, and he believes in being able to meet the needs of your community in your community. So he was leading the charge in getting the move to work demonstration expanded. In 2016, Congress required that HUD add 100 more agencies. They opened it up in 2018. We applied in 2018. We found out 30 days ago that we made the first round of applications and that we are going to be requested to turn in our final application on December 4th. So we're working very hurriedly to do that. We've had stakeholder meetings, we've had resident meetings, because we can't just decide new regulations according to us. We don't have that power or authority, plus it lacks community engagement. So we've been getting input from people as we've been talking to them, we've been bringing partners to the table, and we'll submit that application, but it won't be the final working document. Our plan is then to take the next 6 to 12 months and have a working committee that will represent stakeholders in the community and participants on our program, most importantly, who will help to create what these working rules would look like. So they wouldn't be rolled out until after we've created that in the community and we've gotten it approved by HUD. So we are one of the 100 at this point, and it's pretty amazing. One of the other things that we are working on through Move to Work, you see down at the bottom bullet, a workforce development center. we have gotten an approved offer on the car wash that's right over here. And so after the election, because it's currently being used, we will be closing on that car wash and buying that car wash. Now, why would a housing authority buy a car wash, right? Well, one of the things we learned during COVID is that we are very tight in our office space, and there's a lot of us in there, and so we need to spread out a little bit. So we're going to that convenience store part of that car wash. We've already gone before the building department and shown them our plans. We're going to add additional offices in there, and it'll just be an annex of our agency, of our offices. But that car wash bay, I got to looking at it, I thought, man, we should be doing something really cool with that, right? And so we pulled a bunch of partners together, and we're going to work to create a workforce development center in there that will be the bridge for families living in poverty to get the confidence that sometimes it takes just to even drive up onto campus. So we're going to do some success building for them here, and then in partnering with ISU, take them on a field trip and then go up and say, this is where you park, here's where you register, here's where your classes will be. So we want to build the confidence of the families that we serve as we strive to move them into the workforce, and that'll be one of the ways we can do it. It pairs nicely with moving to work. These were two ideas that were kind of separate and have come together about at the same time. It's going to pair nicely because some of our cost savings and some of our funding fungibility can help go towards that. We already have a lot of stakeholders involved in making that a success. They include ISU, multiple departments of ISU, United Way, NeighborWorks, the Department of Labor. We're working with CCOG. We've got Bannock Transportation Planning Organization on board with us so we can address some of these issues. And the partners are many more than that, because it's not just the housing authorities initiative, it's going to be a community initiative. And it's not going to be the Housing Authority's Workforce Development Center. Although it will benefit the families we serve, anyone who lives within the income threshold can utilize the services that would be in our Workforce Development Center. So that's why we're purchasing a car wash. It's pretty exciting. In there in the middle, kind of got lost up in all of the bullets, is we have submitted an application for what's called FYI vouchers. That's Foster Youth Initiative. And with that, we're partnering with the Bannock Youth Foundation as well as the Department of Health and Welfare. We're going to be requesting vouchers specifically for youth coming out of foster care, experiencing homelessness. They will have wraparound services through Bannock Youth Foundation through the age of 24. If they're successful on the program through that age, then we would just roll them into a regular voucher and start working them on the road to self-sufficiency as well. So we have applied for that, and we're hoping that those come through. We believe that we have a program that's full of integrity. We are a standard performer on CMAP and FAS. I expect that our FAS being submitted this year is going to be high performer. We've historically had clean audits. We've had 0 findings for the last 5 years on our audits, which we're super proud about. Our MORs, so CMAP, let me back up. CMAP is what scores our Section 8 program. FAS is what scores our agency as a whole. We're also required to, those are through HUD scoring system. We're required to have an independent audit done annually, and that's where we've had no findings for the last 5 years. And then a MOR is a management and occupancy review, which is done on the 5 properties that we manage, as well as Portneuf Towers. And so we are always consistently above average and superior performers on there. I'm very proud of the fact that we are a go-to agency recognized by housing authorities across the country and by HUD. So when people have questions, they actually have them call us. We are proud to serve Pocatello. So I always get the question when I come here and meet before you all, like, what can we do to partner better? And for me, everything that we do is about advocacy. We don't lobby, but we sure advocate and educate. And I request that anybody that cares about affordable housing in our community advocate on our behalf. When I've come before, I've asked if you would be interested in supporting us, in sending letters. Our national organization makes it super simple. They write a canned letter for you. All you have to do is put in your information and hit submit. But you can change a letter, right? I mean, it can just be a skeleton and you can change it. And I can tell you as elected officials, your voice is so much more powerful than my voice. Because when I'm saying we really need to fund these programs, it's like, of course we do, Sonny, it's your job, right? But if you advocate for it, you're advocating for the community that you were elected to serve. So we have an advocacy toolkit on our national website of things that letters you could send. I ask for individual advocacy at the state and federal level. This is one that always sticks with me. How can we partner on the Housing Trust Fund in Idaho? I did ask Governor Little about that a couple weeks ago when we were up at the breakfast, and there wasn't really an answer on that. But the Housing Trust Fund was created in the 90s, and it's never been funded. And I understand that budgets are tough all over, but if we don't prioritize homelessness issues, it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse. So we have this thing that was created in the legislature. It's now called one of Idaho legislature's greatest failures because it's never been funded. Now, when they first created it, there were a lot of developers that were super excited. They were like, yes, this is the way we're going to get development money. But I would challenge, if we were to ever think about how could we partner to push to get this funded, to look at it at a different angle and some of the models that have been utilized in other states as I've had the opportunity to travel the country. There are states that utilize a housing trust fund to create more vouchers for communities. So it's just like the voucher program that we already run. It's funded through the state, so you report it to the state. Housing authorities are already good at running voucher programs. And then instead of the money really going into maybe some developers' pockets, the money's going to the families that need the programs, right? They're getting the assistance. So that's something that, since I got into housing, I've been scratching my head about and going, why isn't this funded and why aren't people at the state level more concerned about affordable housing? I just feel like it's just a shame. So we can advocate together. Land acquisition. I'm always in the deal for like free land or a free building or something. We could turn those into something. I'll tell you that one of the things that's super cool that my colleague in Nampa does, it's in partnership with the county commissioners, but they have an agreement because housing authorities can receive gifts from their governmental entities, cities or counties. And so what they've done is in Nampa, when a housing authority on the tax rolls is being repossessed for delinquent taxes, they have the housing authority go in and look at it first and see if they want it. If they want it, the housing authority buys it for the delinquent taxes. The county gives them 1 year to turn the property. So they have to go in and do the investment and get the property, upgrades done and get it cleaned up and turned. And then they have to get it on the market and sell it. It does two things. The first thing is it improves a property for the neighborhoods. You've got somebody that really is going to do their job and improve that property for the neighborhood. The second thing is then they allow the housing authority to keep the difference between what they paid and what they made on it to create other programs. Of course, they report to the county what those programs are and what they've done. They're going to be using it to create more affordable housing and buy developments like we've been doing. But gosh dang, that just is pretty darn cool. If I could figure out a way to make that happen around here, I would be like all over that. And city departments, better partnerships, same team approach. I'll tell you, when we went before the building department for our car wash, they were great. They were just really, really great to work with. They pointed out any concerns they might have because we wanted to talk with them before we actually purchased the property, right? And they were just like, yeah, this sounds wonderful, and they were so good to work with. And I love when that happens because we are partners, although we are not a department of the city, we are a partner of the city. We were created by this city. And so that's why I'm here today, because you created us and I have an obligation to report back on this work that was started 52 years ago. So those are ways that we can better work together. And thank you. We're just proud to serve this community. It's a really, really dynamic, amazing community, and I look forward to any questions you may have. So let the grilling begin.
So I've got Roger and then Linda and Chris.
Okay. To start out with, one question, and I've got a couple other follow-ups. How has the rapid increase in rental rates affected you? Because market has risen dramatically here in Pocatello, and I would think that would hurt your funding, but
it's a roundabout way how it hurts the funding, right? So the first thing that it impacts is the residents, because they can't find units as easily to rent because the rents are so high. So it's not in their range. And, and I applaud. I mean, let's get what we can if you're in the private market. That's a great thing for the entire community, but it makes it tough for my families. And so then we have a struggle in leasing up families. And then when you don't lease up the families, HUD's going to look at your last year of what you spent to determine what you get for next year. So that is a huge challenge. And one of the ways I'm looking at addressing it is through Move to Work, because there's some things that we can do. We can do increased payment standards, which we have done, but we can also allow households to go higher in their income to pay for rent. Currently we may have households that are on our waiting list that are paying right now 70% of their income towards rent. We all know that that's not affordable. And when we go get a mortgage right now, they say 30 to 40% is the correct housing price, but that was set 60 years ago, 50 years ago. So there's some talk now that maybe the 30 to 40% range isn't correct and a family should be able to go up to 50%. That's something that we'll be talking about with this working group, because I don't get to make that decision, but some of those things we can really attack through the Move to Work opportunity. But it affects our families first, and then it can affect our funding.
Follow-up question to that. Your waiting list, I think, is increased over the time on the waiting list. I don't know numbers, but the time on the waiting list, I think it was 18 months.
It's been 18 to 24,
several years
correct.
ago, and now it's up. I think you said 4 years in your slide.
Yeah, 3 to 4 years. I anticipate, we just hired a lease-up specialist. And so I anticipate that within the next 6 months, we will see that wait time be down to 18 months.
Okay, and then how has federal funding affected this? Because it seems like we have grown as a city. Our need is grown. Anytime you grow one way, you grow in another way. Our need has grown, but it seems like we're still at the same level of vouchers we're able to provide.
Yeah, and so what I think needs to happen is internally, in my team, we need to get our number up to full capacity. And they're not going to be issuing more vouchers. When I got here, our total contract was 566. Well, we're leased over that right now, and we have capacity to be 180 over that. But the only way you can get new vouchers now isn't really through that they're going to say we want to give you vouchers. It's through what we call boutique programs that you have to apply for. So that's like why we applied for VASH, why we applied for mainstream. And we're continually looking for loopholes. We were able to add 100 vouchers a few years back because we prepaid on a couple properties, and they were HUD properties, so we got vouchers there. They are not really giving more vouchers.
But should they be? I mean, you are just like you ask us to be an advocate.
Yep.
You are the advocate in our community for.
Yes.
Should we be getting more vouchers in
Yes.
our community?
Yes, across the entire country. And in fact, we're working on a paper nationally to start getting out to our elected officials that say, we have this need that's gone unaddressed. So it's not just me advocating, it's an entire organization. Because yes, there should be more vouchers. It is the quickest way to be able to help a family. It's actually, I believe, better than public housing because it gives them choice. When we put everybody into one location where you've got 70 or 200 families living in poverty, it's much better to give somebody a voucher where they have choice. We should have more vouchers, and yes, I advocate for that regularly.
Okay, thank you. Linda?
I wanted to ask you about and before I ask my question, I was going to make a comment too. I know you're very modest, but aren't you the president of the national organization?
I am, yeah.
Yes.
I am.
So that's actually an honor for our city too, to have the leader of the national organization right here in Pocatello. So
Yeah, thank you.
congratulate you on that.
My board did support my desire to run for senior vice president 3 years ago. I was elected to senior vice president, and last year I became president of the national organization that has, represents that 3,300 housing authorities or 3,300 housing authorities. You make me blush when I'm talking about me. And 20,000 members, and not just the members, but the families that we serve. So I am in a unique position. I don't just meet with our delegation when I have the opportunity to go to the Hill. I meet with people on the Hill from all over the country to talk about our programs.
And I think that really, it reflects well on Pocatello, but it benefits us directly.
Huge.
So, but my question is about the Move to Work program, and I also congratulate you on getting to this 100. And you said the final application, and I use the word final in quotations because, as you said, it's not necessarily the final program defined, but you said that's due in December. When would you then find out the...
They're saying that we should know in January is
Okay.
when they say that we should know. And this application piece, I mean, we're outlining kind of a skeleton of what we'd like to do, but there's other questions that we're answering that are more tied to things like fair housing, to make sure that we have plans, that we currently follow fair housing, that we don't have any fair housing issues, and that we have plans in place going forward so we don't create, through our plan, any impediments to fair housing for households we serve. But we should know in January.
Great. And lastly, I would just thank you for all that you do. This is an incredible program for our community, so thank you.
It really is a gift, and if I could go back to the city council in 1968, I would shake all of their hands because I really applaud them. It was really thinking forward when only 9 exist in the state.
Thank you. Chris?
Early on, you talked about, and I thank you for all the information, but it's
a lot.
And especially being new, it's a lot to intake. But you talked about working on getting extra financing, and this was early on because can you go back and just maybe quickly summarize what that was about? And my question is, what are the options? Where could extra money come from?
So that, my board especially brought home, we started talking about it after sequestration because, the government essentially cut you back like to 60% of your dollars, but they didn't cut back 60% of the work. So we kind of started thinking, wow, our agency is completely dependent upon federal dollars. And that's not healthy for the
Right.
community.
Okay, thank
and
you.
then it happened again when the government shut down for, last year before. It feels like the years have bled together. But we got in a situation where, quite frankly, we were thinking, how are we going to pay our landlords? Because our landlords have mortgages against these properties. And it was quite scary, thinking, how are we going to pay our landlords? Because HUD doesn't allow you just to build up reserves. They make you spend them down. So it's not like, each month we write out checks totaling $260,000 to landlords. And it's not like we just have that. And so the board was like, we need to really look at a way that we've got a different revenue stream so that the programs are sound, whether the government shuts down or not, or they cut them or not. Because if we get to where we are generating our own revenue, the programs go on. Whether the government abandons them or not, the programs go on. So that's really the reason why we're thinking, like, how can we do this? And that's why we're adding to portfolio to further mission.
Okay. And so could you just summarize quickly your options for, this, what I'm calling for me, your flip program, would seem to me to be one option
Yes.
that might stabilize that revenue stream. But what other kinds of options have you been considering?
Yeah, so that's kind of like this pipe dream of mine. I see it working and doing some really, really cool things. But what we have identified that we can do is just add properties to our portfolio. Because as those properties pay off, for example, what we own right now, as they pay off, we'll be generating, probably $40,000 in unrestricted money. And $40,000 a month changes a community. It changes your programs. And when we're talking about what you would do with those things is, we don't have a family self-sufficiency specialist. That is a program that HUD has, but they're really stingy with it. And they've not opened it up for new applications in the entire time I've been here, 10 years. But we could fund it ourselves. With that, we could put escrow in accounts for families as they meet, certain targets. And then when they go off the program, they would have some money for down payment. So these are the things that we've been thinking about that we would do with extra funds. And that's the only way we've been able to target right now is through adding to our portfolio. I will tell you that I had a commitment of how much I wanted to add in my tenure here, and we've done that. We've done that very successfully, so I think we're at where we want to be, unless something that amazing comes along. But that program, I would just be like over the moon. And it's actually done by 2 agencies in Idaho right now. It's done in Caldwell and in Nampa.
And so then how would that impact or not how does that intersect with the voucher program? In other words, if that $3,389,499, if a portion of that were shifted to acquiring properties, I mean, so where, do you understand what I'm getting at? Okay.
So let me be clear, right, first of all, money that's intended, so everything's in a silo.
Right.
Okay, so if it's meant to pay a landlord for rent, you can't do anything else with it. Nothing. You can't pay the power bill with it. So we have 4 different silos of money that are like that. This will allow some flexibility and fungibility between programs. But when you're admitted to the Move to Work program, they take a baseline. You can never, as long as you have that status, serve fewer people than you are serving on that day. So their goal is that you will serve more because of the cost savings. And so the intersection would be, not so much in half, but where I could see on the voucher program, where I could see the intersection really being is in, say, public housing. Because 7 years ago, the capital fund for public housing was funded at $60,000. And I argued that's not enough to keep that building, going, because our tenants really don't pay that much rent, right? And so, but this year, it's $154,000. Look at that huge swing. And we all know the game, right? Like if you're gonna get $154,000, you better spend it. And we're good at spending it. We're very good at spending it. Every time people come out and look at that property and for what we consider a physical needs assessment, they always just say, what do you want me to write down because the property's in good shape? There's nothing I can identify. But my argument is $153,000 is a lot of money. And we could take some of that, say if our working group said anything in capital fund over $100,000, each year we want to use that to fund self-sufficiency activities. That's where that intersection could be. Have a cap of what you would use for that program, and then once it's over that threshold, then you could say, we want to use this for workforce development for our community. That's the only way you can do those kind of things, and as long as you're still serving the same amount of people with the same or better services.
Okay. Great. I'm glad you are so on top of all of this.
That's what I get paid to do.
I appreciate that. How do you decide in your student housing, what's your process for determining which students qualify?
Sure. They obviously have to be a registered college student. Okay, so that's the first thing. They provide us that. We also look at criminal history because we don't want to be moving people into the same units because it's shared. It's 4 bedrooms, 2 baths per unit, and sometimes you're moving in with people that you don't know. So we check criminal history, and then after that, we qualify them. It's first come, first serve. Now we do try to make sure that we're matching the best we can. There's strictly girl units and strictly boy units. And that we're trying to make sure, like if it's like freshman and sophomore really go well together as opposed to putting a freshman with a senior. You've got that big age difference and maybe some patterns of behavior that aren't going to match up. So we try to make sure we're doing that. And it's a crazy month of lease up in August, and then it's pretty quiet until the next summer.
Well, so I guess my question is, if I'm a student from a family that could be helping me, as opposed to a student from a family who has no capacity, or, for example, a first generation college student, I would.
So there's no subsidy. There's no assistance.
No,
So
but
it's just rent.
the rental rate is,
It's for one, if they sign for 1 year, it's $250 a month.
Right.
If they sign for 2 semesters, it's $275. And if they sign for 1 semester, it's $300. And I think that when you see that we've got 6 vacancies, it tells you that that hasn't been an issue, that we've had to select someone over someone else.
right. But I'm thinking sort of in a global partnership model. Students, for example, emancipated students, students graduating from high school who are low income, how could or does, how do you partner, for example, with high schools to make sure that as part of the go on to college global picture, these kiddos would know
That it's available.
hey, this is available as part of my entire how am I going to get myself to college package.
Gotcha. So we actually work with the school counselors and let them know of the housing availability, and we get referrals from the schools quite often.
Great. And then, from my perspective, one of the significant work issues in our country revolves around people who served time in prison and been released. We release them, and I mean, Amy's does a fabulous job of really supporting that population, but in general, our concept is, okay, now you've served your time, now go out and take care of yourself. And I think we all know that that's not proving successful. So I'm wondering if you currently have, or how you deal with, or future plans around maybe specifically really looking at supporting people with prison records.
And it's not a statement necessarily on our country, but I think that we really have been lacking in our approach to people who have been released from incarceration. Simply because when time is served, time should be served and the slate should be clean, right? But there's so many things in place that prohibit that from happening. But in partnership with the United Way, I serve on a couple of their different education boards, and so we work with large employers. And so we're talking about, through the Move to Work program, if we could create an incentive for an employer, right, to take on someone that they may consider at risk, and that we would help to subsidize through some of our funding streams that maybe we could utilize for a month or 2 of their employment, so that they could have time to have that person prove that they would be a dependable hire.
And I don't know what rental agreements look like these days, and I don't know if it's legal to ask and require someone to respond on a rental agreement
It is.
if they're a felon or
Yes,
whatever.
it's absolutely legal.
So it seems to me that not only getting hired at a job site, but simply having a place to live represents a huge barrier. And I mean, if we want to funnel people back into the prison system, a great way to do it is to make it hard for them to find a place to live and make it hard for them to find a job, because
Recidivism happens at a higher rate when people are stressed.
Right.
And lack of housing causes stress. And when I first got to the Housing Authority, we had a look back period on criminal history of 20 years. And I was like, that's shameful. I'm not the person I was 20 years. That's just absolutely ridiculous. And so for the integrity of our program, we do have a look back history of 2 years. But if they're denied for criminal history, as far as our program goes, they can request to come in and meet with me. And then I'm going to say, what are you doing to make sure this doesn't happen again? I can tell you that probably, a couple of the crimes that people would be like, oh my gosh, that person can't be housed there. Immediately, we housed right after prison. Because, first of all, full time had been served. Like, we're talking 25 years since you had gone to prison. And you're 67 years old. That's not going to happen again, probably. So we really try to take a serious look, because we do have an obligation to make sure our families that are neighboring are safe. So I want to know, what tells me that there's not going to be a recurrence of that issue? What are the behaviors that what treatments have you gone through? What classes have you gone through? Are you currently, on probation or parole? I mean, there's a lot of things. So we don't, no doesn't mean no. No means give me more reasons to say yes.
And so how does that how does that, all of that work, which I applaud, how does that intersect with your landlord voucher program? I mean, that would be a place where there might be an opportunity for an educational conversation.
And one of the things that, and we do have landlord workshops once a year, we do have those, but that's one of the things about the open market is it is open market. As long as they aren't discriminating and crime is not a protected class, just like vouchers isn't a protected class, so they can discriminate as much as they want against those two issues. That would be, I can educate as much as I can, but I would be really hesitant to push legislation of any kind that would require landlords to do something that they just doesn't fit in line with their business model. We and the properties that we own, we have a different approach. But that's not to say, I mean, that's our mission, right? I cannot make that be an owner on the private market's mission.
Right.
I can't.
Right. And then what are the criteria for determining that a neighborhood is a neighborhood of opportunity?
Transportation, neighbors who are all working, and good schools, because we all know that there's, in poorer neighborhoods, the schools aren't as high quality, and it's oftentimes because they're more transient population of students. And so a neighborhood of opportunity is an opportunity where there's greater level of stability in the school system. There's opportunity for transportation. There's, a good network of support that when somebody moves in, they might be able to access that good network of support.
And I'm sorry, I have so many questions.
It's your guys' time, not mine.
And so you mentioned that we're going to be experiencing an increasing need for skilled workers, and that's not a surprise. But one of the with our significant poverty rate and with COVID and everything, that is probably, it was rising anyway, but it's going to rise perhaps even more, although some of those people would be displaced from jobs. But many people who, especially if they come from multi-generational poverty, what is the definition of skilled? Because that's where, $7.25 an hour.
So my first approach with my family is to work to move them into the workforce. Is if you're able-bodied and you're choosing not to work, you get a job. And if it's $7.25, I'm going to celebrate that all day long. Right? Because it's a job.
Right.
The other piece to that is through self-sufficiency planning, like we will hope to create in-house, we can do things like you get that job first, you develop that work history, and we're going to work with you through the process to develop skills to either move on in that job or to get a different job. I'm very blessed in creating this. I'm also a certified career coach. And so I can say to people, like, we're going to get this job first. And then we're going to identify in your company if there are other jobs you could apply for, and we're going to work with you on that. But if not, then we're going to have you start doing some classes on the side so that you can increase your income.
And what do we know about the skills that will be needed in the future, so that, what I'm thinking, like a career counselor. I'm thinking, when I counseled my kids, it was like, okay, these are the jobs today, but once you do yada, 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 we need to be looking at what are the jobs going to be when you're ready to be the one applying. So what is is there any kind of knowledge about what those skills might be?
And that's why it's beautiful to be able to have partners.
Right.
Because obviously they are much more knowledgeable on those things than I would be, and they give me the information that I would need through those partnerships. But some of the things that we already know that are clearly evident are jobs that were probably when you were talking to your kids too. We have a huge shortage on people who can do construction work. And that may not be a college degree job, but that's a job that pays.
Right.
And so that's one of the things that ISU, and they had great success with their construction combine. And so those are the kinds of things that I'm not necessarily saying you need to go get your PhD.
Right.
But we need to get you some skills. Can you swing a hammer? Right? But more importantly with my families, what I plan to address is, did you set your alarm?
Right.
Did you shower?
Yes.
I mean, we're going to talk soft skills first before we do pie in the sky, but pie in the sky is certainly going to be on the horizon.
And then, Mayor, this is probably a question for you. Would there be any opportunity, for example, in future city TIF districts that might include plans for residential? Would there be any capacity on the part of the city to influence and assist with ensuring that a reasonable portion of that residential might be low income in some fashion, so that when the city is participating, as we do in a TIF district financially, what capacity would we have to say, gosh, we'd like to see X percentage of those residential be, because a new district like that, like Northgate, for example, would probably, it sounds like it would meet the definition of a neighborhood of opportunity.
Similar to what they do in Blaine County.
I'm wondering whether, and maybe that's not answerable right now, but I think for me, that's going to be an important question moving forward if there are other TIF districts proposed.
Well, the quick and dirty answer on that would be, we would look at all of those things, but what we're usually looking at is what is going to get the city, get the stuff reimbursed the quickest so we can close a TIF district the quickest.
Right.
So we'll be looking at those things, but everything's on the table when you start looking at it.
So that wouldn't be precluded to say this is important to Pocatello.
Not at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting in Blaine County, one of the things that they do, because as we know, development was so rapid there and the cost of housing is so high that you couldn't even have your school teachers or firefighters or police department residing there. So when they build like condominiums, they require that the developer give like 1 out of every 30, make it so that it is a low cost and deed restricted. And so if that family ever goes, it's a low-income family that can buy it, but if they ever go to sell it, it's still deed restricted so that a low-income family can continue to live there. And that's just one example of what they do in Blaine County. So yeah, there's, whatever we can do to partner, we'll always be at the table with you.
Right. Sure. So that might be a future agenda item is, since the folks in these programs are residents also, that might be a future agenda item. What options are theoretically available to the city in future development to be simultaneously helping our struggling population. So I'll add that to my list of agenda items for requests for when we have that. And then finally, is there anything concrete at this point in time that the council could do to help encourage whatever you need, because the flip program that you described, it sounds to me as though that the mechanisms to put that in place have to happen at the county level. But I'm curious, either now or after you've had time to think about it, I would very much like to know what, if anything, the council could do to partner with you in supporting you getting access to that kind of a program, if that's what you sound as though you thought that was
I think it's a great idea. And and the county benefits, because then it's back on the tax rolls as a higher end property.
Right.
I'll just say it this way, like I don't run in the circles y'all do, right? My people they aren't at any of the places where politicians are at. Mm-hmm. And so, if you're somewhere where there's a gathering of folks, it doesn't hurt to put a bug in an ear. And say, you should really go talk with, like Sunny, let's see if we can't facilitate a meeting. That would be the best way. There's been so many different things that it changes at the commissioner level, but I keep saying, well, when things settle down with the commissioners, and then it seems like we've got a new batch again. And so, but I would love to, just be able to sit down and say, talk with them. And I don't have that connection, and I've not made that phone call. So anything that you could do to just be like, here's an idea.
Sounds good. We got a question from Roger and then Claudia, I think, has
And
something.
thank you for everything you do. by the way.
Mine is more of a comment or question to you, Mayor. Have we advocated for housing improvement for middle and lower income people through our lobbyist?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a national convention annually in Washington, D.C. I've gone a few times to that with Sunny, and we sit in front of our lobbyist helps us get in front of, Sunny's group gets us in, helps us get in front of our delegation in D.C. Before or after that, our lobbyist also gets us in front of our delegation so that we have the opportunity. Kind of outside of that, everybody's going through the Capitol, and we have an opportunity to sit down and visit and stuff like that.
Have we received a report back from our lobbyist as to what the lobbyist feels his effect has been? I think accountability to the council from the lobbyist as to what they lobbied for, and so we can measure results is an important quality. We used to receive reports back. Lobbyists used to come and meet with us, and that's been years since that's happened.
Yeah, a few years. He hasn't been back a few years, and he was going to come this year, and COVID hit. He was I think he came the year before, maybe the year before that. I can't remember what. But we've not asked him for a report specifically on housing and stuff
Well,
like that.
I just think a generalized report
Yeah.
about what he saw as the primary issues and what he has advocated and what he believes his results are. I mean, we've
Yeah.
got to have some monitoring.
Okay.
And I will tell you too that the mayor is kind of like the gentle giant in the room when we go to DC, because when you've got an elected person with you, like I said, it's my job. So if we have a commissioner or a resident or an elected official, it's pretty important, because what the mayor has said every time when he's gone is he just says, we're so glad that you were seeing us today, and I'm here because I want you to know that housing is so important in our community and this work that they do. And then he says, but I brought experts to actually tell you about it. And so that really gets them more engaged right from the start, and I've always appreciated that, so thank you. Was there?
Are you done? I just have one question regarding the criteria for the landlords, for the ones that you funnel directly the payments to. Is there a criteria that you have for maintaining those properties, or there is?
Yeah, there is.
Because I thought you mentioned that they have to meet very basic health and safety standards. Is that it? Because to me, very basic just means that there's water and the roof isn't caving in. Is there more than that?
It's basic. And there's times when I will tell you, I wish it was tighter, because we have amazing landlords, and then we have not so amazing landlords.
Right.
And it's opportunity of choice, right? Because it's the voucher program is called Housing Choice Voucher, and so it gives residents a choice. And so when I go out, because I go out and do inspections too, when I go out, there's times when I'm like, why are you choosing this? Like, why? I don't understand what feeds choice for some folks. We don't say you need to, get your siding looking better. We don't say that fence is pretty raggedy around the property.
So
we don't have that.
Do you think that the choice is made by these people in need because those not so great landlords are more ready to get the easy money? So
I think, and that you're speaking exactly to a fabulous book I read just recently called The Voucher Promise, and it talks about the voucher program in Baltimore. And yes, there are landlords that are just going to prey on it, right?
Right.
I mean, it talked about that as soon as people came out of briefings in Baltimore, that there were landlords sitting outside that were willing to drive them to look at their properties. Another part of that, though, is it's really difficult for families, even though Pocatello is small, it's difficult for families to move out of a neighborhood area where they feel comfortable. And so if they were already living in that neighborhood area, or if mom or sister or best friend lives, around the corner, they're probably going to be more likely to choose that space because they feel a level of comfort there. Even though I kind of laugh because we're a super small community. But yeah, that is a challenge. And HUD does not allow me to blacklist a landlord unless it's really, kind of egregious. what they have done. And so I go through a place and I will say, I don't like this. And especially if somebody's just moving in, I'm like, I don't like this home for you. More importantly, I don't like this home for your babies. Because at the end of the day, that's my big concern is those babies that are living under that roof. But, it is it's basic. It's health and safety. Some of the things are ridiculous, like my house wouldn't pass for. And then there's other things that are like, wow, I can't believe that's not on the list.
Along those lines, the way you do and one does in terms of taking kids to college campuses or to union trade schools to show them, because it's hard for them to imagine even something that they've never seen. And so I'm wondering, while HUD doesn't allow you to blacklist landlords until it's egregious, would HUD allow you, for example, and I understand this takes staff and time, to sort of do a tour of neighborhoods for people so that they, perhaps can begin to see, oh, okay, that is a voucher landlord. Okay, wow, dirt front yard, etc. This is a voucher landlord. Oh, look, a picket fence and it's actually painted. So that they begin to discern. Because in my experience, one of the things that happens for people, especially if they're coming from a chronic poverty instead of a situational poverty background, is that we know what we know by our experience. And frequently these folks undersell what's possible, but also what it's okay for them to want, because that's not what they've been taught by their circumstance. So I'm just wondering if without interfering with the free market and so forth and so on, if it might be possible to apply some education and guidance and experience on the client side.
And we do. At our briefings, before they lease up, we educate them on neighborhood of opportunity. We provide them with maps that tell them where it's at and what the services are that are there, why it's better. We would have to probably utilize if we got moved to work, because right now we don't have funding or staff to do anything like that. And you did point out one thing that would be critical, and it's showing all neighborhoods, because otherwise it would be steering and we would get in trouble with fair housing. So we could never do that and just show like, oh, this is the nice neighborhood. We could just go, oh, look at this, and let people make their own assessment.
Connect the dots. Connect the dots.
Thank you very much, Sunny. Thank you for your time.
Oh, Sunny, could you send me an email with your contact information?
Oh, yeah, for sure, absolutely. And if you, my email is just my first name, Sunny.
Is it with a U?
What,
Sunny with a U.
Yep, SUNNY. I was born in the 60s, at hacp.services. It stands for Housing Alliance Community Partnerships.
Okay, great.
That services. It's a real email. But yeah, I can follow up with an email to all of you just to make sure you have my contact information.
Thank you very much, and thank you for.
Thank you.
Wow, what a presentation, and it's obvious how passionate you are and how effective you are. It's not just passion, but you translate that into action, and you're quite impressive.
I have an amazing team that backs it up with action. So you can have vision all day long, but if you don't have people that are putting the work in, then that doesn't happen either.
Well, please pass our admiration on to them as well.
Thank you. I will do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too, Sunny.
We will move to agenda item 4, is Pocatello Arts Council update. Representatives from the Pocatello Arts Council will discuss the committee's goals and projects as well as council policies and recommendations.
All right, good morning, everyone. I am pleased to be here to showcase the 2020 year in review for the Pocatello Arts Council. So thank you for having me. My name is Mark Cooper. I'm the chair of the Pocatello Arts Council, and we are a board of 11 members, and we meet first Monday of every month. Some of our organizational initiatives for this year. was that we established a new Pocatello Arts Council website. Our previous website was starting to be a little antiquated and was not kept up to date. It was difficult to keep it up to date. Working with the website provider provided some challenges as well. So we made the decision to switch to Squarespace, allowing us to have full design capabilities for the website. We're also in the process of revising our mission, vision, and values for the organization. And we have revised the grant process that we have in place, providing grants to the community. And in February, we had the honor of being chosen as a project client for ISU, the Political Science Department, who offers a grant writing course. And we were able to meet with, I believe it's a graduate level class, and we were able to meet with students and tell them a little bit about our organization, some of the needs that we have identified as an organization in terms of potentially seeking outside grants now and into the future. And so we were able to obtain from that course some nice templates and recommendations for grant writing for us in the future, and maybe also to help our partner organizations to also write better grants. Unfortunately, COVID kind of jumped in, and ISU moved everything online, so we weren't able to have a full formal presentation, which is what we were hoping to do. But we did get all of the students' recommendations and their templates. So those are just a few of the organizational initiatives that we've had for the year. I'm going to move on and talk a little bit about some of the projects and the events that we had going on this year. So starting with the events, we had planned public events such as Arts Council meetups and artist networking events within the community. And I will say, even though these are temporarily on hold, these are still projects that we are actively planning for and brainstorming to make better. But the meetups and the artist networking events, Shakespeare in the Park, unfortunately that was canceled for this year. Early on, the Montana Shakespeare Festival, Montana Shakespeare Group decided that they just couldn't put it on, of course, and so they notified us, gave us a refund of the money that we had given them. And then we were hoping to do the second annual Arts Council Awards and Empty Bowls fundraiser. And we are still looking to do maybe an online auction of some of the bowls in order to raise money for the food bank. That was a suggestion that was provided to us from the marketing director of the Idaho Food Bank as something that we could do. We've contacted some local online auction houses who've agreed to help support us. So that's something that we're considering to do. We have a number of bowls that were already created by the ISU Clay Club. So that's still in process, but the public fundraiser unfortunately was not able to be held. So I'm going to move on and talk about some of the projects that we had this year. So Station Square Mural, this was a project that was funded at the end of 2019 to place a mural on the back of the Station Square building. The artist Nick Hotman painted the mural. It started in October 2019. Unfortunately, the weather changed. He had postponed it to the spring. Unfortunately, COVID hit, and then he was able to finish it up last month. And so it's a really amazing mural that he's placed on the back of the building. I believe at night. It has special paint in it that shows up in the dark too. That's pretty cool. All right. Ooh, what happened to my pictures? I promise there were pictures here. So in 2019, that's what happens when you go from Google Slides into PowerPoint. In 2019, the Pocatello Arts Council provided a grant to Cottonwood Junction and Michael Snyder to start an alley mural behind his building, and that was done successfully in 2019. And this past spring, Michael contacted us to do an expansion of that project, and also to refresh some of the existing murals. The concept of the alley mural is that it's a rotating outdoor art gallery. So artists can either update their existing murals, or else they would be painted over for that. So we provided a grant of $600, and that covered the expenses, paint supplies, and other equipment to provide that expansion and refresh. There we go, there's some more pictures. We also provided a grant to the Old Town Actors Studio, who is a partner of ours, and to provide funding for a play called The Light in the Library. And this production was to take place in April, and due to COVID-19 was postponed. They put on this production in September. As you can see, a cast of children. Our funding went to the costumes here, and so that was for the design and the production of the costumes. And one other, and this one is kind of a special project that's near and dear to my heart, is we gave a grant to Stars for the Arts, which is an organization, a local organization that seeks funding and provides art classes to elementary schools, not only within Pocatello, but also within the region, I believe. And I discovered this in the journal, that they were seeking funding for that. We contacted Stars for the Arts, asked how can we help. They gave us a proposal for a grant, and this grant provided art classes to Washington Elementary School on a monthly basis, beginning last October and every month. And the initial plan was that in May they would have a gallery showcasing all the students' work. Unfortunately, that did not happen, but they were able to finish all of the classes, and these were some of the projects that they did. They brought in, Stars for the Arts brought in local artists to teach these classes to the elementary school children, and they just had a ball doing it. Here's a list of some of the other grants that we did towards the end of the year. These are projects that are still in process. I believe our friends from the library had mentioned the Arts and Community Ticket Program, and this was another program that we learned about in the Idaho State Journal, and contacted Amy Campbell of the library to see how we can help and support them, as this is a program that really ties to some of our core values of making arts accessible to everyone in the community. And so through this program, we were able to provide $330 for this program to purchase two pairs of tickets for ISU theater for this upcoming season. We were also able to, for the next year, the Washington Elementary Parent Teachers Association contacted us to support for this upcoming school year another elementary school program at Washington Elementary. And last one that I have here And this is for the Pocatello Arts Center. They had submitted a proposal to the Arts Council asking for a grant to help them with some refurbishments around their establishment. And our grant would go to a neon sign that they have purchased and would like to refurbish for their own purposes. And so those are just some of the initiatives and projects that we have funded over this past year. Despite some of the public events that were not held due to COVID-19, it shows that you can't keep the arts down. And creative people are going to find creative ways of expressing themselves even during these difficult times. So some of the things that we are looking forward to in the upcoming year is to continue providing support to artists, local artists in our city to help develop this talent. We're also looking to, with our website, to be able to provide a better portal to which artists can learn about what we do and seek us out as a potential source to fund their projects. We've streamlined our grant process. Now we are in the process of creating templates and other resources that will help us to be able to better align what we are looking to fund with our own core values. And as I mentioned, we're also in the process of establishing or revising those core values. We have a meeting coming up on the 19th of this month, which is a work session, a special session of the Pocatello Arts Council, where we will clarify and identify what our mission is to the community. So that's what I have to report, and I'm happy to take your questions.
So Linda, then Chris.
I just want to say real quickly, thank you for persevering during these difficult times. I think your presentation shows that you can't be kept down and that the arts can't be kept down. And I know it's been challenging, but it's amazing what you've been able to accomplish even with those challenges. So keep up the good work.
Thank you, Linda.
And I miss you.
No, I miss you too, I know. We have a wonderful representative in Chris.
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay. Yeah, as the liaison, and I'm fairly picky, being an ex-member of the arts community, not here, but I am particularly impressed by two things. One is the sense of focus and an organized approach to getting some of the infrastructure, so to speak, really improved, up to speed, and so forth and so on. That is so frequently an issue for when you get a bunch of creative people in a room, and I think that is certainly the other Mark has also been, Nyworth has also been really pitching in on that front, but your leadership, I think, is really helping to sort of get all the cats in the same lane and move forward on some important fronts, along with the templates and the that you talked about in the new grant application forms that are going to create some uniformity so that it's easier to compare apples to apples as you're going through your selection criteria. I think the other piece of it is that the focus on tightening up the not only making the post-project requirements clear for the grant recipients, but then also ensuring that they're complied with, and that there are reasonable incentives in place to do that. I think that's really important, and I really, it's sometimes hard to do because the folks on the council are essentially holding their colleagues, an accountability standard, and so I applaud that as well. I'm also, you didn't mention, but I'm excited about the artist meetups, because what I know from experience is one of the things that keeps artists in a community is the sense of a vital community of colleagues. And I think those meetups are really important. So I'm excited about that because I believe that it will begin to build a core arts community that makes other artists want to come here and or keeps artists here rather than saying, oh, I need to move to Boise because they have such a vibrant community.
Absolutely. And
So, yeah, the psychological impact of that, I think, will go far. It sounds like a simple little thing, but I think the potential impact is huge.
yeah, I mean, we've seen, it's interesting to see how things have evolved since we can't meet in person, but that also opens up the door where we can have virtual meetings through Zoom or Google Meets where artists throughout the community can come and talk in a virtual forum.
Right, yeah. I just think that's, I'm really happy about that one. I'm also impressed by one of the new advisory members is very interested in opening dialogues with the school system, so that rather than have the Arts Council kind of be supplying programs for the school district, to be working maybe and this was the PTA, but working with the school system to see if the Arts Council couldn't supplement with a match situation coming from the school district. And I think that's very reasonable, and I'm excited about the energy around that. I'm also, I think there's a greater impact to the Art Center project because that end of Main Street could use some revitalization and some greater aesthetic appeal. I mean, there are individual merchants, brew house and so forth, who are really making efforts in that direction and improving not only the front of the Art Center, but also the improvements that they're making to their grounds really supports other merchants in the area and really contributes to the aesthetic revitalization of that end of town. And so I applaud the Arts Council on understanding the greater, and that's been talked about. I mean, your folks have talked about that, and I applaud the council for having a greater vision and understanding how the arts can impact the community, even in an potentially economic sense. So thank you for your leadership. You have a great crew of people who put working together and discussing honestly at the top of their priority list, and I think it shows.
We do. Thank you very much. And that is a pay tribute to Mayor Blad, who picks and recommends our folks from a pool of interested candidates. And you've done a wonderful job of providing us with a diverse group of individuals who bring different strengths and different abilities. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you.
Arts is absolutely important for our community, so thank you.
Thank you, and thank you all for your support. Have a great day.
Okay, do we need a break for 5 minutes? Let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll be back to agenda item 5.
Requirements.
So thank you very much for joining us after the break. We'll go ahead and continue on with agenda item number 5. It's medical insurance update, human resources. Heather Buchanan, Human Resources Director, and GBS staff will be in attendance to present medical insurance credit information from Blue Cross for 4 months of fiscal year 2021. Ms. Buchanan will explain the process used to calculate employees' monthly medical rate for October, November, and December 2020 and January 2021, and address how the credit is to be applied. There is no council action required for acceptance of the Blue Cross premium credit. Council may wish to give direction to staff regarding appropriation of the city's portion of the premium credit. Heather.
Heather Buchanan, Human Resources Director.
AG Argyle, GBS Benefits.
I know you can hear me, so. So today we bring good news. We've received a credit from Blue Cross. So today we're going to talk about the credit itself, what those savings look like, how the employee premiums will be affected, and then I do need direction from council on what to do with the city portion of those premiums that will not be expended. So Blue Cross, we got an email, which was a very happy day, that said we're receiving a medical credit of 11.8% of our premiums for 4 months. That's because our loss ratio from January to June of 2020 was 65%. Those premium credits will be on our October through January bills. We received our October bill. It was awesome. We saw this large credit at the bottom that we don't owe money. It's nice to get money back when you can. So based on our enrollment as of 10/1, so just so we remember, we've added positions this year. Those are not included in those figures. The savings for the fiscal year 21 budget are currently 3.89% or $197,000, which is the city's portion. And just because that 12.74 I like so much, it's getting kicked off the ledge. Compared to last year, we're at a 16.29% savings, or just under $1 million to the city. Any questions? I know you all just want to stare at this page because it's nice.
So we need to learn a new number?
I want you to
16.29.
I want you to bask in all this good news, because I'm sure it doesn't happen very often, and probably
It's very rare.
it might be the calm before the storm.
So a credit back from Blue Cross, it's awesome. I don't think I've ever seen one working in HR. How often have you seen them?
Very rarely. I mean, I've handed out maybe out of our 150 groups, 6 or 7 in the last 10 years. It's very rare.
So we're going to enjoy it this year, understanding that this is not the norm, and next year I will not be coming to you in October and giving you good news.
That's why I want you to bask in it now.
So it's a very complicated calculation to talk to you about what the employee's premium will be. It actually takes 3 11 by 17 sheets full. Basically, we weren't able to affect the October rate, which is where we saw the first credit, because we pull that the last pay of September and the first pay of October. We've already done that. I can't affect it. I can tell you the credit is here in the third column. This is what you would save by group. So an employee only will save $1.65 a pay period. If you're a part-time employee, you pay 50% of the premium, so their savings are much larger. So an employee only who's part-time, where they pay 50%, they'll see a 16.47. So we couldn't affect here. So that means on October 30th, we pull the first and the last pay periods of the month for credits. There will be a 3 pay period catch-up. So that's 1, 2, and 3 to come up with their catch-up amount, which is ketchup. That sounds a lot like we're like a condiment. The premium due, and then after that it will stabilize through the end of November into January. It'll just be the decreased amount. We'll know what that is going in. And then the last pay of January will return to the fiscal year established rate that was presented to council during the budgeting process. The savings per employee are listed over here on the side. So an employee only, they'll save $13.20. An employee with a family will save $116. You can see when you move to the part-time, the numbers are considerably bigger because they do pay more of the premium. Our October credit from Blue Cross was $57,000. So this isn't set in stone. We're still wiggling these numbers a little, but we'll get them over to payrolls once we get done with this presentation. So there will be discrepancies in the bill because we are doing everything retro. We've already paid October. I need to now give credits. Our head count is going to change. We're going to give those new people the credit as well. Any difference between what is owed and what we pull out of paychecks, we're just going to have the departments absorb within their budgets because they already have that money set aside. So the city won't see the exact amount if they've added a head count.
that 11.8%, they're going to cover that difference. I don't have exact calculations for you because it's impossible to figure. When it's all said and done, we can bring up final numbers and we can explain to you what the overall savings are once we get through the credit period. So the action item I do need from council is, what do we do with the money that's sitting in the budget lines for benefits from the city side? We have three options. Number one recently came about. We are experiencing a vendor change, a mid-year unexpected change, and the new carrier that we would go with might have higher costs. So if we just reserve that money in that budget line, we could put it towards to offset the possible increased cost. Option two would just be leave it in the budget line and it would return into the reserve pool at the end of the fiscal year. And that would roll back. Reserve funds cannot be expended once they're in the reserve fund without council approval. Or if council would like other options to do with that $197,000, creative, interesting, we can bring those forward at a later date. Right now, HR is recommending leaving it in the budget line to help us cover the cost of the vendor change.
What vendor is changing?
We've discontinued our relationship with our EAP provider.
We did or they did?
We did.
Because?
They were not meeting the needs of our employees in crisis situations.
And then if it doesn't fully utilize that, then
It would just
It would
stay
just
in
go to
that line
reserves.
and roll into reserves.
I think it's a good idea to keep it in case we do have those costs for the vendor, so I would support that.
EAP is currently paid out of the HR budget. It's not paid by the departments. I can't absorb a big increase in it, so we would just pull then a little bit from each department to cover those costs. If the costs are higher, we don't know. We're still working on finding a new provider.
Could you just go back? I think I heard you say that. What is the rationale for giving new people the break?
Because the credit is on the bill. It's not a credit from June. It's because of our June experience. But in the month that they're employed and they pay for benefits, they cost less. So because they cost less, they should be charged less.
Okay, all right. So it's not somebody who starts today gets...
They wouldn't get October's, but they would get November's.
Right,
Yes.
right. Okay, all right.
Conversely, what if someone quits in the middle of this refund period?
Because it's for the months that are coming at us, they would only receive the discount if they were working in the month of the credit, than when we apply it.
Yes.
I'd like to make a guidance motion that we accept the recommendation from HR and allocate that money toward any possible increases resulting from a vendor change.
So,
Second.
so option one.
Yep.
Okay. So we have a motion by President Adamson and a second by Lurick. I think is who I heard first. Just any other discussion? Connie, could you please call the roll?
Adamson.
Yes.
Lurick.
Yes.
Bray.
Yes.
Cheatham.
Yes.
Ortega.
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for the good news.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's rare we get to bring something like that, so it's exciting. So we'll make sure the employees know what their discounts will look like once we get those numbers finalized today, and you guys will be included on that email.
We don't have rose petals to throw.
I know.
I guess perhaps also.
Most people don't want to throw rose petals at me,
Well,
Chris.
that's what I'm saying. It's this notion that bask now.
It's been a good year. Employees, that's clearly all off of employee utilization of benefits. They're using them well. We do see the downtick because of COVID. Things have been pushed off, but our employees are using their benefits wisely. And this is because of them, so.
Well, I think it's a credit also to Ann and the folks in your department, you know, because you've helped folks make the connection between my behavior and my premiums.
Yeah.
And so that, I think you and your department deserve credit for that as well as the employees.
Well, it's just nice to give employees something back. Usually they just see their rates go up.
Right.
So any little decrease we have, it does matter to them.
I have a question regarding the Health Joy. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Joy app?
Health Joy.
So I saw the email about, people who downloaded and whatnot. And so are you going to get any kind of report from whoever Health Joy is that says this percentage of your employees have utilized?
We already have that.
You already have that?
It's on-demand reporting.
Okay, so we will know that it's getting utilized.
We can already see people are having prescriptions reviewed, and we can see the cost savings that have been offered. People are just getting the hang of it. We're at over 50% enrollment at this point. I have a list. I will call you if you have not downloaded the app, and I will show up to help you download it. Most employees that have accessed the app are pleased with the options that it has. We've already been using it at the health fair. An employee will show up for their blood draw, they'll pull the app up, and they'll get their member number. So it's already going well, but we do see utilization. We can pull those reports daily.
Okay, so it breaks it down to telemed and okay, perfect.
You'll get an ROI on it for sure. That's what you're looking for, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, and I'm just curious as to whether people, because I think because of the COVID, telemed is a whole new accepted thing. Plus, if I remember correctly, the Health Joy makes it a zero copay for the employee. So I'm just curious as to whether that's actually being utilized, because I think you don't always need to be a face-to-face with the doctor.
We haven't had a telemedicine visit yet, but we have had quite a few prescription reviews.
Okay.
Which is great.
Great. I was going to say, I spent a couple of hours after I downloaded the app looking at really cool glasses. So I was impressed with all of the different things that you can do in the app. I mean,
I went to when you go to the wallet, there's a financial one where you can link your account. So I linked my HRA Viva so I can see my balance. But now I get this depressing once a day, your account balance has changed. And I'm like, the stock market! But we're going to disable that right now.
Right. I don't particularly care what somebody who owns 2 million shares of Dow
it's just
did
funny.
or whatever.
You get this little message on your phone, and I'm like, oh, the stock market had a rough day.
Yeah, well, I get what's happening in my bank.
But I think it's going to go well. Employees have been very helpful, and they're reaching out. We're teaching them, if you don't have a smartphone, how you can get on, utilize the service. So we're making sure employees have access to that.
Good. Awesome. That's good to hear.
That's great.
Because I thought that was a great idea.
We're very excited. If you walk into HR, the first question is, have you downloaded the app? Let me go ahead and help you.
Maybe it should go on a sign up there with, do you have your mask? Have you downloaded?
Did you download? Oh, I pull that report like 5 times a day. Who's going to walk in my office that I could ask?
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, AJ. Thanks for making the trip down. Appreciate it. Thank you very much, council. With that, we are adjourned. Oh, wait, before we adjourn, I'm sorry, because I really did have a question. Why do you have a pink shirt on?
thank you. I wanted to tell you why I have a pink shirt on. So this is the Firefighters Union, the IAFF Local 187, and the president, Andy Moldenhauer, is here. And they are selling, and I know a few of you have gotten yours already, but they have t-shirts and masks for sale that are raising money for breast cancer awareness. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so if you know me, this is a pretty bright color for me to be wearing, but I'm supporting a good cause. So if you would like a t-shirt or a mask, see Andy and help support their support of breast cancer awareness. Thank you.
Perfect. Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, it was Break for Breakfast was yesterday.
Yes. And that's part of it too. Break for Breakfast was through Portneuf Medical Center, where you can do a drive-through breakfast and get information about
that email.
breast cancer.
Yeah,
Yeah? Yep.
She supports that.
I do.
That's right. All right, super, thank you. Thank you,